here he comes out. Honky's like, give me anybody. I'll take anybody on. And, dun, 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 and the look on his face is like, oh, shit.
It's the golden age of WWE. Larger than life of fantasy. Step in the ring, feel history. Welcome to the golden WWE.
From Mega Bucks to the Mega Powers at SummerSlam 1988, right here on the Golden Era podcast with Sean Mooney. Sean, where is your little dab of cream to make sure you don't burn at the beach?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll tell you, where I am.
You always need it.
But yeah, out in Arizona, we're going to be 80 degrees here next week. But yeah, it was definitely warm at Madison Square Garden in 1988 for SummerSlam. Mm-hmm. And it was, it's special to me. As you know, Steve, this was my first pay-per-view event. I hadn't been with the company very long. I'd kind of gotten my feet wet, as they say, in the event center, performing horribly. I was trying to figure out this business at the time. And I remember I was a wreck going into this. I mean, come on. You're not too long before that, I was barely on TV. And then here I'd been, it'd been a fire hose of, learning and trying to take it all in. And then you're going to be going to Madison Square Garden, and it's live, right? Going out to all these people. So I wasn't really privy to what was going to be going on in this thing. I knew the matches and that kind of thing, but I didn't know what my place would be. And had some pretty good interviews as far as that they trusted me to do, especially with the Ultimate Warrior, as we'll talk about. But it was special to me for a number of reasons, and certainly at the top of that is that this is where I was really put to the test. Now, could I do it? So yeah, this is and for the company too. I mean, there was a lot going on at the time. They already established some of these big events, mm-hmm. but to add this one and do it in New York City, I knew it was very important to Vince as well. They wanted to see. It wasn't in anybody's mind thinking it was going to be a one-off. I really think everybody knew. Okay, we're doing this, and now we're going to have. It was like seasonal. Became seasonal. Yeah. We had these events. WrestleMania would kind of be the way it would all come together at the end of whatever that season. Then we'd begin again.
I guess springtime, right?
Yeah, Royal Rumble and all the, as we started to add those. And it's funny today because they have them every month. Yeah. But back then, it just seemed that we just finished one, and oh my God, I got to start this other one. So, but it was a really exciting time, especially in the world of professional wrestling and what Vince McMahon was doing. But as we saw in this one, there was still a lot of rough edges, which we'll get into.
Yes, that was the first thing I noticed when I was watching this, because it's the opening of SummerSlam, and you see Virgil counting money, and it's very, very crude editing of the Mega Bucks, the Mega Powers, and them kind of doing their thing, flexing, counting money, Andre looking strong. But when you have commentary like Gorilla Monsoon and Superstar Billy Graham, it really stands out to me as a wrestling fan, because you're like, I don't recall this group. You always remember Gorilla or Jesse. This is a different one. Now, you personally worked with Superstar Billy Graham on a few events. What was your personal relationship like with him? But what'd you think of him being on the first SummerSlam doing commentary? Because that's like a trivia night question later on if you're going to go out.
Yeah, that, Superstar and I worked together more than, a lot of events. Along with Alfred, we were a 3-man team that would regularly do the garden shows. And when I say that, Madison Square Garden, then we'd also do Boston. And we would go up there and do these events. And I really loved Superstar. He was really gracious to me, very, good, helping me, become educated. And, at that point in time, he was pretty broken down. I mean, he was later in his career, he wasn't going into the ring. And I just remember that he had a lot of hip issues was walking around with a cane and, had mobile issues getting around. But as far as, working together, he was great. I really loved him. And, but as far as a commentator goes, he was pretty much that real old school where you would just pump in and like, oh, that was a great whatever it is, and instead of providing some layers or some levity to it or going more than that, and so I think you look back there and I think he got a lot of criticism for his commentary, because I think it was kind of that feel of, the old TV studio kind of commentary. And this was before, remember, this is before the announce teams really started to, work together, as far as Jesse and Vince becoming what I always thought, and I've said it before, a very good team. Great together. Team.
Yes.
I love that dynamic between them and the banter and Jesse being able to put the boots to Vince all the time. And then he could, switch gears, or there was a different dynamic between him and Gorilla. And then eventually we would see the team of Gorilla and Bobby, which to me, nothing really compares. But that wasn't really, Bobby's main thing going, and had not really established himself as what he would become with his value to the WWE. So they're still experimenting, and Vince, this was a really special event to him. I don't think he wanted to be necessarily featured as the main commentator for it, and so that's how that team came together. Gorilla and Superstar had worked together before in other things, that maybe weren't necessarily big fanfare or where they got a lot of play for it. But it wasn't terrible by any stretch. Superstar could do great calling matches. It's just that we were already starting to see this transition to what announce teams would become in the WWE. And that matchup was definitely old school. So you really did have that feel that, of the old TV studio or very small arena with the metal chairs, So that's kind of the way I felt about it. Yeah. It wasn't terrible, but it certainly wasn't. I didn't see Superstar becoming, part of this. This group that we were going to continue to use all the time,
Yeah, Vince loved bringing in wrestlers randomly. Brutus Sammartino did commentary for a little while. Obviously, you had Macho Man Piper, The Anvil, Honky Tonk Man, Shawn Michaels in '94. Like, there's always a group of wrestlers he just brings in randomly, I think, because if they're so good at talking, they should be good at talking about other wrestlers. But sometimes I think it's more difficult to discuss someone else's attributes than yourself. Obviously, you can put yourself over when you have to talk about other people on commentary. It's very different. And I want to say something too, is he doesn't get enough credit, Superstar Billy Graham, that is, because you listen to the way he speaks, you hear so many different wrestlers. You're like, wait a minute.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, wait a minute.
No kidding.
The way he's phrasing words, using daddy, the way he's speaking, saying brother, like, dude, all the greats borrowed or stole, depending how you look at it, from Superstar Billy Graham.
Yes, absolutely. And he was also, Hulk many times credited Superstar Billy Graham as one of the biggest influences. He wanted to be just like him. Mm. And also Jesse. Jesse was, just I don't know how, at least in the initial beginning of his career, he was basically a total knockoff of superstar Billy Graham. But they weren't the only two. You're right. Superstar set a standard. He was unique. Really, of the first. There were other muscle men in wrestling, but nothing like what he would do with the tie dye, and he was already doing the kerchiefs and
like
his
he had like a beard that was like two different colors.
Yeah, different colors, and his rap that he had. I'm sure Dusty stole some of that too from they all did. And you're right, he never really got the credit that he deserved, as far as he started an entire different lineup of wrestlers that would take a little piece from watching what he did with his promos, and the whole posing thing, where the Hulkster definitely took that in, and where it wasn't just you saw muscle guys, right, who had good physiques, and obviously they worked out, but then you didn't see these guys that were just massively cut with the help of science, as I say, and to the extreme. But absolutely, and Superstar was the led the way. He was a truly unique personality, and set the stage for many wrestlers to come, and still influence today. I mean, there are I'm sure people can go back and they look at that stuff, and you're going to see man, he was doing it back then, and really owned that stage. He paid a terrible price for it, because in the end his body was just a wreck, and even when I worked with him, he had issues because of not only the way he performed in the ring, but from what he put into his body.
Right. Yeah, it's true too. But yeah, there's a DVD that came out like 20 years ago now. They did a documentary about him. The WWF did, that is. And it's very well done. And again, it really shows you that a lot of people borrowed from him. And so the other characters took what they got from him. They made it bigger and larger. So if anyone saw the difference, they'd be like, oh, well, Hogan's not copying Superstar Billy Graham. If anything, Billy Graham's copying Hulk Hogan.
No,
that
doesn't work that way.
History lets it line up.
Yeah, and they admit it. I know, Jesse's talked about him many times, his influence, and same with the Hulkster. That's, in any profession, that's what you do.
That's with the actors, that's with the actresses, musicians.
Exactly.
It's not like you stole. It's like you were inspired. So now you're borrowing from certain people, certain jokes, stand-up comedians, all that stuff. So it's nothing new. It's nothing new in wrestling.
No, it isn't.
This SummerSlam is new. It's the first ever SummerSlam headlined by Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, Miss Elizabeth, Jesse Ventura, Andre the Giant, $1 Million Man, and I guess Virgil too. So the Mega Bucks versus the Mega Powers. Now this is
Mega Bucks versus the Mega Power.
Got to get the handshake in. Oh yeah, we don't know how to shake hands.
Yeah, brother. And you see these the matches with when they go in the ring, and Randy's wearing the yellow brief, whatever you want to call it, and with the Mega Powers on the back, and I just couldn't help but thinking that probably killed him, because
you're wearing Hogan.
Well, it was Hogan. It was his day. It wasn't the Hulkster coming out with the big cape or the bangles, or it was
sunglasses, yeah.
And I'm sure that just was like, but necessary. Also, Randy was a realist and knew when it came right down to it, that's what they were doing. It was the Mega Powers. And so, but I that was one of the first things I thought of, that must have just killed him. That's like that he had to, that costuming, whatever they were going to wear, it was going to be all Hulkamania themed.
It certainly was. Like, I'll put on the tights, but I'm not putting on the bandana.
No, not gonna do it.
waving his finger. Yeah, this one, I love the fact that it's off the back of Hogan, Savage, Manila Man, Andre, because I want to travel back to WrestleMania 3, Hogan body slamming Andre. From that point on, the WWF business just goes up. There is no like,
Yeah.
oh, business was doing okay. Like, no, it becomes a household name. We're having wrestling buddies. We got action figures. We have video games, board games, workout systems. It's endless in merchandise. And that's what Vince McMahon will always get credit for being a promotional machine. But we have to give credit, I think, to Hogan and Andre. That body slam led to the birth of Survivor Series 87, which also led to them trying to screw Crockett. But then that built up to this double referee situation. WrestleMania 4 is built around Hogan and Andre one more time in the ring. Here we are again. It's been like 6 pay-per-views, well, 4 pay-per-views with them headlining events, selling tickets and putting butts in the seats. Can you describe to me how important Andre and Hulk Hogan was to not just wrestling, but the WWF business?
Oh, no question about it. I think if you talk about pinnacle moments that, launched the WWE to what it would become even today, that was a slam heard around the universe. It wasn't just, it just changed everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't imagine, 2 other personalities that you could have put into the ring where you could have made that happen. People probably, you could come up with other superstars, other personalities that did great, but I couldn't have seen a Ric Flair in there doing that. It was this with Hulkamania and this giant of this icon in professional wrestling, really a wonder of the world when it came down to it, and pulled it off perfectly. And in front of a crowd like that, just everything about it. And, Terry would say how that slam, ruined his body forever. He everybody knows, okay, it's a work, and Andre had to cooperate when you go up, when you weigh 500 pounds. But the Hulkster said, that his back was a wreck after that, and they were working every day and never had any time to take care of it. But it was worth the price overall when it came down to it, because, my God, look what happened from that point on. And, really, professional wrestling was never the same again. And then you had a promoter like Vince McMahon who had that vision. You think about it, we've all had great ideas when we want to do these things, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But the obsession and the idea that, they always say failure is not an option. There's nobody, I think, on the planet who lived that and made it happen than Vince McMahon. Look where the business was barely, 5 years even before that. 10 years, absolutely. It was, the way it was divided up, and you're still seeing these small little shows, and suddenly it is a world event. And then to have that foresight, that vision of saying, okay, this is going to happen, and then we're going to take full advantage, and then start having not just these house shows across the United States, which, like, how dare you? And then on top of it, we're going to have these other more world events taking place 4 times a year, where people are going to pay money to have it brought to their living room, or they're going to go down to their favorite pub or whatever it is, and they get to watch it. Who does it? How do you even see that? And it's all happening very quickly within a couple of years. And it's just incredible to think. I remember, being there and thinking, like, what, how do they keep coming up with this stuff that you can't and being in the event center and them bringing all this stuff in, and these house shows. And as we'll talk about
schedule
this event for SummerSlam at Madison Square Garden. Well, sure, it was a big event, but nobody realizes that in the meantime, all these guys are on the road. We've talked about what the formula was back then was that the boys made their living going to house shows. They would go and their percentage of what they would make depended on the gate, how many people showed up. And as this thing kept getting bigger and bigger, those house shows, they're doing 12 to 16,000 people a night at some of these places. So when they're like, well, then we got to do more. At one point, and I think by the time of SummerSlam '88, they were doing 3 tours across the country.
Yes.
Now, you've got, I don't know, maybe 60 or something superstars that are going around. You got an A, a B, and a C tour, and you're doing shows. You're in the ring probably 8 to 10 times in a week sometimes, and these guys are going, and they had to be at this pay-per-view for SummerSlam.
Mm-hmm.
It was just for them, and it was just another house show, a big one. But you have to understand that's the way the machine was grinding, and Vince knew, maybe in the back of his mind, he didn't know if there's going to be a dip or if this is going to take off, or it's going to keep going. But it was just push, 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 go, go, go. And, this was an event. And as I said before, going into it, it wasn't like they were saying, oh, we'll see how it goes. This is already in his head that we're going to be doing 4 of these a year. And so there wasn't to say, see how it does. And it did really well. I mean, the numbers on this were great.
Yeah. I want to bring up the house show.
400,000 buys or something?
Oh, yes.
I mean, it was,
yes.
Yeah.
Let me just bring up this house. You brought up the house show, so I'll mention it. So the day before SummerSlam, SummerSlam's on a Monday, by the way. So the day before, it's a weekend. You have Toronto A show, B show Montreal, and C show Indiana. So all these wrestlers who are going to be on this show, on these house shows, need to get to now New York City the day or the next day to make it to SummerSlam. You have Toronto A show, Hogan vs. Bad News Brown. Montreal B show, Savage versus Dino Bravo. C show, Brutus Beefcake versus Hercules.
Well,
Brutus was pretty popular.
There were big names, but if you're in a small town somewhere, which those guys have played, some of these smaller venues, sure, you're pretty excited that Brutus Beefcake's coming to town and Herc. True. So and that's the way they played that, it was, based on. The whole business was based on a carnival card, in a sense, where if you got on that A tour with Hulk, you were one of the top superstars, and because if he's there,
money,
that gate's going to be big, and you get a piece of that. So you want to be in that tour, but at the same time, if you go to these, these smaller venues, and they're putting 4,000 or 5,000 people there. That's a hell of a lot more than these guys were ever used to doing. Many of these guys on those tours, so they were happy to be there.
Good point.
And then you would you'd work your ass off because you'd hope you'd get elevated. So that's kind of the way that worked, but it was just exhausting. And to go there, and then this is a huge event, but nobody else knows that you've been on the road for 3 weeks without a day off. But you got to keep finding a way to do it and get out there.
Yeah, so, the circus never stops. They keep on going, I guess, with 3 circuses going around. But you brought up the buy rates too. Is all right. This pay-per-view did 400,000 buys. Okay, WrestleMania 4 did 485,000 buys. All right, so about 85,000 difference. To me, that's not but of a dip because WrestleMania is a known name, a known brand, a commodity. SummerSlam's brand new, but it's attached to the brand WWF. So it really shows you that it doesn't matter right now what we do. If we put the WWF logo on it, we're going to make money.
Yeah, absolutely. And it showed you that people were hungry. It's funny to think now where you would go, is it going to be too much? We're going to get, that we need to spread this out more. And they quickly found out, no, they'll take everything you give them. And that's when they started to take full advantage. I'm surprised that they didn't, that model really didn't change for a very long time where they didn't do more. But I loved it because it gave us an opportunity to really build up these storylines to where you got to the point where it's like, oh, I gotta have it. You gotta give me. I gotta see what happens here, and wrap it up, and then either start something that would carry on, or you give them the finish, and you could move on from there. So I thought the timing of those events where they were apart were perfect. I think that we could really do a lot in between. And then, of course, the machine is rolling because all these house shows.
Of course.
It was a gigantic promotional tool. Superstars and Challenges said that we didn't really ever give anybody anything for free. You got to see these guys, but the whole purpose of that wasn't necessarily to drive people to pay-per-view. It was to get them to the house shows when we came to town. Mm-hmm. And we were everywhere. And no one knew that better than me, sitting in that chair every day, customizing all of these markets. And I just kept thinking, like, how can we keep doing this? At one point, I think it was, 93 different events that we were, cities and stuff that we were promoting at one time. They were,
wow,
spread out. And remember, I told you how we would do these, 3 weeks from tonight, or whatever it was. But we'd get and everything. We didn't have the computers then. They would come over in sheets. Howard was in charge of all that and kept track of it, and it was overwhelming. It would take me 4 solid days of doing one after another of these events just to get caught up. And then, there would be something else. I'd be shooting Coliseum or whatever. But it was 4 solid days in that studio doing it over and over and over again. And something would happen, and then I'd have to change the card or whatever. And then in the meantime, we'd be plugging an upcoming pay-per-view, which was also part of it.
Wow.
So, at the time, it was, here we're talking, it's 88, and it's coming together, but we're still a ways away from what the WWE would become. Oh. And it also showed, Steve, the network influence that you started to really see here. And I've spoken before about, Vince's idea of bringing other people in. He wanted our programming to look as good as network sports. That was really important to him. And so when any, machine would come out that did some kind of special effect with, the video or what, they got it. And that was in edit 1. And they had some, brilliant people in there. Kevin Quinn, I don't know if he's ever really been talked about much, but he was this kid editor in there. And of course, initially it was Kevin Dunn. Oh, yeah. And Larry Rosen was the audio guy in there. And it was this small team. And these guys did all of this. And that was it. And I also want to I want to mention too. We should mention Kerwin Silfies, who passed away.
Yes,
recently here, and Kerwin was the director for decades, and never. I don't think he ever really got the credit for not only what he did for the live events, but Kerwin had a tremendous influence on what we did with our other programming as well. And just an awesome guy. I mean, really, and a great sense of humor. And he didn't come from the world of wrestling. He was another guy that Vince, brought in, and didn't have a huge role first coming in, but then became essential, and was that way for decades. And I tried to get him on the podcast, Primetime with Sean Mooney, a few times. I'd seen him. I saw him whenever I would go to shows or something that invite me in. I always would find him, and because I just love the guy. He was great. And I would always say, "Come on, you got to come on. You've got some great stories." And he did do some interviews with the WWE for some of their docs.
Okay.
But he was just not comfortable. When he was like, when I'm done. When I'm done, we'll do it. And I just regret I never got him in front of that microphone because I saw it all happening, and I really wanted to give him credit for what he did. But at that time, it was a very small crew, Steve, that put this all together. And my point is that you mentioned there's a green screen there that wasn't sharp or whatever. It was the beginnings of really becoming what the product would look like. And I felt at one point, they were watching what we were doing.
Oh,
yeah. The networks were watching what we were doing and copying what we were doing at these shows with their opens and the excitement that would be generated before you went to that opening shot of the arena, and Howard counting people in to when we're going live, and that pop. You wouldn't do that at a football, at an NFL game or something,
asking
to
the fans to
tell the audience, we're going live, and 5, 4, 3. But we could do that because people knew you're part of the show, you're part of this, but people, it added to everything we did there. Those early shows, if you go back and look, sports was always centered on the ring. It was kind of, the boxing mentality where you had everything was focused. The lighting would be on the ring. The arena would be dark with the crowd. Well, WWE changed all that. Chris Chambers, as you know, we're doing episodes with him and backstories. And Chris was one of those guys that was in on all these innovations that the WWE was doing at the time, and talks about, the signage. Well, most sporting events, people, they don't want you to have a sign because you're going to block somebody's view right?
Yeah.
Well, they invited it. It was because it was this interaction of bringing the crowd into it. So there was so many things going on. And every time they did one of these pay-per-view events, we learned something. As you said, the green screen was kind of a new technology then. It was out there. I did all the event center in green screen.
Well, you look
spoiler.
Great.
Yeah.
Spoiler.
But, yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry, folks. But yeah, that's the way it was. It was a green screen. I was sitting at a desk, and there's this green behind me, like the weather guy. But it wasn't perfected at that point. And so some of those interviews with Gene, because he was in a different set, I was in the real set, the set that was the locker room set.
Yeah.
So my stuff is going to look better because when you're trying to set that up in an arena, and it's to this day, when you do green screen, the lighting has to be very even. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can use different kinds of lights and but it has to be even. And if it isn't, and you get shadows or wrinkles or something. And when they put it, and especially back then, it would tear, I guess is the best way to describe it. So you would see through it, or it'd be another piece of video that would show through it. And it was, or the edges, you'd see, around people's heads would be, this white, when they move. It's kind of like those stupid things that people do now with the,
I was going to say, watch this. I can just do this now. Look, I'm at a beach.
Yeah. But then when you turn like your ear,
what? How did I get here?
Would disappear. Yeah. Right. That's great. Yeah.
It's so easy. Boop, you just press the button.
But it was early technology there. The point I wanted to make is that, Vince was not just wanted his product to be great, that people would want to see these guys in the ring, that the personalities and the superstars, but the look of it, he wanted to change as well. And that's when he was bringing people in from the network. And that's why I mentioned that network influence. Well, this was still the early days of that, but you could see that things were changing and for the better as far as how these events took place. And it was important because Vince wanted to get rid of that old view of, seeing stuff in TV studios and basically high school type environments. And hell, come on, Madison Square Garden, packed to the rafters. This was a whole new world for professional wrestling fans.
Yeah, you're right. And bring up the green screen for a minute, where you go to Mean Gene and the Mega Powers, and they're ramped up. They're clearly on something, and they're just having a blast. But each one is trying to get the last word in as they're talking, and then the green screen is just bleeding out because they're too big. So take a wide shot, you can see the edges of it. It looks, I'm sorry, but it looks really, really bad. And then later on, when you go to the Honky Tonk Man being interviewed before his match by Mean Gene, they did close-ups. They realized, like, okay, that was bleeding. That was a problem. We need to fix this. So Honky got like this nice close-up MCU of him, so he looked much better. So they're learning even on the fly on pay-per-view, going, okay, that was bad. That looked really bad. Let's fix this. And so, but we go to you with Ultimate Warrior after he wins the Intercontinental title backstage. Yeah, you're just in a locker room, so you have no issues with that. I do want to talk about that later, but first I want to bring up the Itsy Bitsy Teeny Weeny Yellow Polka Dot Bikini that we were promised for weeks and months building to this matchup where Macho Man challenged Andre $1 Million Man for a tag team match at SummerSlam. They accept, obviously. They don't know who the partner is going to be because Hogan's away. His daughter was just born. He's away filming No Holds Barred, so he's not on TV that much. But they report that Jock Tunney has announced that Jesse the Body Ventura is going to be the special guest referee for this matchup because he's the only man who can lay down the law for both teams. So I kind of want to talk about two things here. Jesse Ventura, why would he be added to this matchup? I get it. Like, oh, he is on TV. He's a character. He doesn't like Hogan. So will he side with the $1 Million Man? Like another storyline in this matchup. Like, why do you think he needed to be added to just give this match more gaga?
Yeah, well, I think you just said it there. Just added to it. And, there was no love lost between the two. And even if you're talking about as a work, Jesse always put the boots to the Hulkster, was always that he wasn't buying Hulkamania. And so, to have that element in there and then, Jesse has been in the ring, and so he knows all the tricks of the trade here, and he might pull some fast, shenanigans here, and knowing Jesse, he'll be able to justify it somehow because he always did in his commentary. So, and also Vince putting Jesse over. Whether or not, I think it was begrudgingly because I think, personally, it was always business to Vince, but at the same time, it drove him crazy that Jesse kind of had that the attitude of really, I'll walk tomorrow, I don't care, and Vince knew it. It was but they also we were starting to see that Jesse was over, that as an announcer and really was helping the company.
Yeah.
So it was.
Well, he was in the Predator too. So I just want to make sure everyone understands. He was in the Predator a year before this SummerSlam. So I think you're bringing it up like, add him in there because people recognize him not just from wrestling; they recognize him from a hit, The Predator.
Exactly, and I don't know if Vince felt like we're going to be able to keep him around all the time, but I want him to be part of this. Maybe I can, bring him in for the big events or whatever. And so, that was a chance to profile him and also add another element to this. Could Jesse really be, call it down the middle? Could he really be fair, or would he find a way to, help the other side here, so to speak? And so it did. It wasn't really, to me, just a little throw-in, but I mean, you could make that work with the storyline. I think it did, and I thought Jesse as a character was tremendous. I really did. I think, and I liked his commentary. I didn't like him with other people besides Vince. I thought he worked great with Gorilla, but I thought him and Vince were great. I really did. I just thought that dynamic was great.
It did work. You did accuse him in the night of SummerSlam 1988 with a backstage interview on the green screen that looked so good for you. And you asked
I always look good then. Come on,
I know you always look good, even right now with our new cameras. So I just want to say you look amazing right now, and I think I look pretty good too. But with Jesse, though, you ask him, you're like, hey, so we saw some video, like $1 Million Man's offered you money over the past few weeks on TV, like, are you taking money? And Jesse Ventura kind of gets mad at you a little bit, but he brings up, like, well, listen, I'm here to be the referee for this matchup. I want to make sure that Andre understands, because they even tease building up this match that Andre is going to Jesse and like, you better do the right thing or, bad things are going to happen to you. And Jesse's like, wait a second. Don't you dare say that shit to me, because I'm a heel and you're a heel, but you're threatening me. No. Like, I am still a badass. I'm still the body. Don't screw with me. So there was nice elements of building to that storyline. But the other part is building that Hogan and Savage have a secret weapon. And it's Miss Elizabeth, but it's her itsy bitsy teeny weeny yellow polka dot bikini. That bikini is supposed to defeat $1 Million Man and Andre in this matchup. It does, but it turns out it's just like, old lady panties, I guess. But was Macho Man, like, was there ever a design to actually have this itsy bitsy teeny weeny, like a I don't know, like a thong back or something, like really edge it out there? And Macho Man's like, do it.
No, yeah. That was, I mean, come on. They're bloomers, basically, granny bloomers. And it wasn't like they wanted to be wearing a thong or something. Yeah, just something that would be like a real bikini. Can you imagine, Randy? I mean, come on, Elizabeth. I remember they had a poster because the aerobics thing was big.
Oh yeah, and
they had a poster. I think it was one of the top selling pieces of merchandise they ever had at the time, of her in this aerobics outfit, with the headbands and some weights in her hand or something, if I remember. But can you imagine if it could have been a nice bikini? Just you see that skin, that, my God, I don't know why because Randy liked making money.
Right.
And he signed off on that one. But that was such a letdown for people to see that, because it was even beyond what people could have expected.
Well,
like even like a tight pair of shorts would have been better or something. Just give us some insight here.
A tight pair, just a pair of shorts.
But these bulgy bloomer things with
they
polka
were pretty
dots all
bulgy
over
too.
them. Yeah, it was. And Randy had that influence. He
ruined it. Damn you, man, Randy said.
Right, and I think it was a personal thing too. But I think Randy didn't want to make Elizabeth come off as like this piece of meat, but come on, why did people like Elizabeth so much? She was sweet, she was loyal, but she was also freaking beautiful. I mean, like she was hot. And I can imagine how many teenage boys, and that's, we loved the families then.
The dads were having a good time.
They were their first crush. So what a missed opportunity. Yeah. I mean, come on, show her in a bikini.
But you're right. That poster is more seductive than what we saw here because.
And isn't that funny though? You think back now how risque that would have been. Let's say if she would have just dropped it and like one of the ring card girls or something. Just like that with high heels on, and that place would have it would have blown the roof off the place. That might have been like the biggest spot of the whole night. And if she did, a photo shoot like that, man, I'm not saying she had to do Playboy, but man, she could have done a fitness magazine in a bikini or something like that. It would have the amount of publicity they would have gotten over that would have been phenomenal.
She always had the face of someone
missed opportunity, really.
Yes, but she just takes off the bottom. And then Jesse, Andre, $1 Million Man, they're all acting like a cartoon, like,
oh my God.
Oh, I've never seen a woman wearing bloomers. Like it was, I get what they were going for because in a wrestling match, how often does a woman just get up the apron and rip off her skirt and reveals that she's wearing, underwear or tights? Yeah. I guess it doesn't happen often.
The payoff was awful. The build-up was way over the top, and then the payoff was dreadful. Because I know, everybody. You could just see the crowd reaction too. It wasn't. There was not anybody in the crowd going. They're like, "That's it? That really? No, that's it? Ooh."
There was a lot of dads with the binoculars ready, and then what? Yeah. What? And then a little.
I knew it. I said, well, yeah, this is not going to be good. You're gonna let these people down. They were waiting for this. It was just awesome, and then you do that. Like it was even too far. It was like even worse than you could have made it.
Well, why?
Let's say they just could have done do one of those. Like a bikini bottom that is goes up to the navel, not a string kind of bikini.
Yeah.
People would have loved that. They would have said, okay, let's see,
I swear I swear to God, she was wearing something underneath the bottoms because it just looked like, I'm like, you look frumpy. You're not frumpy, Miss Elizabeth.
Frumpy, that's the word.
You're looking
old school marm.
Like we don't want to see your
marm collection.
I don't want to see your butt. I want
bathing wear from the school marm collection.
Yeah, not a
polka dots and all.
No, again, it's fine for what it is. Like it does its job. The bad guys fall over and the good guys win because they're distracted by, a lady. Oh my God, a woman in the ring. What's happening? Not and
nobody was buying that reaction either. That's another thing. They're really, like you said, they're all like, oh my God, and they're like. Oh yeah, they're like definitely that day. They're going, wrestling's fake.
we're going home, kids.
We're not buying that shit.
No. But Jesse is Ventura is the referee. He plays down the law a couple times. He even changes the ring ropes from corner to corner in the beginning just to show that he's the law in the ring. But he's reluctant. He's reluctant about counting that 3, but he does. Mega Powers obviously win, and this is again, the even more teasing of Savage and Hogan and Elizabeth and the dynamic between them three, because Savage is kind of like, why are you celebrating with Hogan? Like, you're in your underwear,
Yeah,
lady.
already.
Like, what's going on here? Why don't you come over here and hug me too? Like, there's a lot going on. So they're already teasing this, and you brought up earlier about pay-per-views. There's only a few in the year. So when you look at each one of these pay-per-views with Macho Man and Hogan side by side, each one of them has a breadcrumb to the story of the Mega Powers exploding.
Yeah,
And
that's
to
a
me,
great
that
description.
is brilliant in keeping to it. You're talking about event centers taking 4 or 5 days to record multiple towns, multiple cities, advertising matches. Vince McMahon had a vision and he stuck to it. He didn't go, oh, it's a bumpy road. Maybe I shouldn't do this anymore. Like, no, he stuck to it. It took a year for it to go. So, again, it's probably the greatest storyline that actually had extra pieces allowed to be grown out of it. What do you think about the Mega Powers exploding as a storyline? Because you have Austin and Rock and McMahon and Stone Cold and all these things, but I don't think anyone can touch this one.
No, and also because they had the time to do it.
Yes.
And your analogy there, what you said, breadcrumbs. That's a great way to look at it. Is that you just keep dropping these breadcrumbs, and people were just lapping them up, and bringing them along. And it really was one of those storylines of how they knew they had this payoff way down the road. This is where we're going to get to, and Bruce talks about that being in those meetings back then, where that Vince would lay this out. I think Vince was at his best then when he was really putting this all together, and but they had the time to do it. And even as we would see later, and certainly some great storylines you mentioned, the Stone Cold and Vince, and but they didn't have the layers that this one did, as far as that dynamic between Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, and then you have Elizabeth, the oldest, the
greatest story of all.
That certainly bounced along reality there because of Randy's obsession, and his relationship with Elizabeth was always talked about. People would wonder, is this a work with her, that the way he treats her, and he's so obsessive, and he's so protective, and it was always, what is it between them? And for the most part, everybody will always say, he really is like that. And so that would bleed over into the character that Randy Savage had established. And then you bring in someone like Hulk Hogan, who's this all-American American. Eat your say your prayers, eat your vitamins, and he's just the salt of the earth, and he would never betray a friend or have that lust in his heart for someone else. But then you're thinking, well, it is Elizabeth, and it's, and he kind of sees the way Randy treats Elizabeth, and he's just trying to be a friend, and things happen. Happened to me before, and I was, and so I get it. That whole, you got people out there thinking that what's going on here? Maybe there is some truth to this. So that's why it works so well, and it was so subtle, like you said, when they're celebrating, and why would, Hulk puts Elizabeth up on the shoulder or whatever. And Randy's kind of like, well, I get it, but man, what's he doing?
Yeah.
Why is his hand there? Remember, there was always a thing like,
close. Yeah, he's always too close.
Right? And it was, so that's why that worked so well. And honest to God, there was some truth to it. Randy, not necessarily thinking that he thought that Terry had eyes for Elizabeth, but that whole idea of, overshadowing him and always getting the, Hogan must pose, and always getting, he's wearing the Hulk briefs, the Yeah. So that was another part of it. So that's why that worked so well. And at the same time, they had the time to tell that story and keep it going along. And it was great. I mean, mega powers, and then everything exploding eventually. So, but one of the greatest, I agree with you, that one of the greatest storylines in the history of professional wrestling.
Yeah, it's hard to.
I've never seen anything like that before, where you could take it that far and find so many different ways to entertain with it. Right. That's what it came down to.
Well, especially a storyline that carries over generations, because there's been so many wrestling storylines, or so many wrestlers that, say, a fan who just started today, if they're getting into it now, they're only watching today's wrestling. But some storylines are so powerful that they cross over, and suddenly, like, oh, I do know about Hogan and Macho Man, or I do know about Austin McMahon, or the Bloodline. Like, there's all these little things that people can know because it's so powerful. It carries over into new generations, which I think Hogan and Savage 100% do. But also, this SummerSlam has the Ultimate Warrior winning the Intercontinental title in 31 seconds against Honky Tonk Man, who held it for a long time. The man was the longest reigning Intercontinental champion for about, I think, 20-something years, until Gunther in the WWE beat that record. And it was one of those things where, like, will Gunther actually do it? And he did it. And so congratulations to him. But Honky had that for a long time. But the big storyline is Brutus the Barber Beefcake is the one who's supposed to be fighting Honky Tonk Man here. And gets pushed out, gets replaced. In storyline, Ron Bass, who really had nothing going on, shows up on a TV episode and stabs Brutus Beefcake in the face with one of his spurs. And there's blood everywhere. But the infamous big red X covers the screen where you can sort of see blood, but you can't see blood. It's in and out, but Warrior replaces him, winning the Intercontinental title in 31 seconds. Now, there's so much around this, because months before the Mega Powers even got together, Honky was going to lose the Intercontinental title to the Macho Man on an episode of Saturday Night's Main Event. Honky, apparently, according to rumors, refuses to do this. So then, that's when Savage eventually wins the world title at WrestleMania 4, because Hogan's got to go film a movie, who can be world champion. But Honky agreeing to lose to the Ultimate Warrior, but not Savage, to me is one of the shocking, most craziest moments ever, because why wouldn't you want to put Savage over when he seems like a man's man when it comes to business? Because we've seen him do it time and time again. But let's talk about it. What do you think about all of this happening? Because Warrior winning the championship, pretty big moment for him.
Yeah. Oh God, no, absolutely. And and then 30 seconds, 30 plus 1 second, was it 31?
31.
For Wayne to do that was a big deal. And to him, it was all about respect. And it's amazing that he was able to say, no, I'm not going to do a job for Randy Savage and get away with it. So I think that there had to be some logic behind it. I mean, if that's something Vince really wanted to happen, it was going to happen. And, Honky Tonk wasn't that big of a superstar where he could make those kind of demands. Sure. And I think Honky talks about it. I've heard him in interviews before about, that a lot of it was about respect. And I think it was the way they wanted to do it initially for the Intercontinental belt that he didn't agree with. I don't think it was so much personal with Randy that, but he had worked with Warrior, I think, 6 months had worked with him before and talked about how, incredibly stiff he was. Everybody hated working with Jim because he was just wasn't getting it. And he, in a lot of ways, he didn't need to, because he was getting, such a big push. The boys eventually corrected that, old school. Mm-hmm. But when Wayne talks about Vince coming to him with the idea that they wanted to put the Warrior over, and that he said that this guy, we want to really push him, and we'd like to have you help us do it. And he said that they asked me when I said, okay. He said when they asked me how I wanted to do it, that made the difference because it wasn't just this is what's going to happen. You're going to do it. And you're going to like it. It was we respect you as a veteran. We know this is a big ask, so you tell us how you think it should be done. Which for him, everybody has their what do they call it? Their love words or their how do you approach somebody, and that was what it was for him. That it was the respect, and he said, "Okay, let's make it quick." That we know he knew the business, he knew the pop it was going to get, and here he comes out. Honky's like, give me anybody, I'll take anybody on, and dun, 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 and the look on his face is like, oh shit.
He's like, not him.
Right, and he comes out, and it's a freaking squash in 30 seconds, and it blew the freaking roof off that place because it was just like that, and that was a gift, Honky Tonk Man. That was a gift for him to do that. Giving up the belt for one thing, and giving it up in that fashion. It was a catapult for the Warrior. I mean, especially as you said, look how long he held out of that belt. Now he didn't hold out of that belt, regardless.
He lost to Rick Rude for a brief moment and then got it back.
Yeah, but that whatever his ways of maintaining that belt, he had it for a very long time. So he obviously had some cred in the ring for people, fans wise, that he didn't have the belt just because he was danced well and couldn't play a guitar.
Did you hear that Honky refused to get the press slam because when they were working together, Warrior would grab you by your nuts and squeeze them. So he was like, I will not take that press slam. Like, I'm not letting you pick me up. Like, you can, and then if you watch the clothesline, he punches Honky right in the face with the clothesline. It's not a light boop. He's like, boom, and he just goes down.
Imagine taking that every single night, right? Imagine doing that when you're on the road. Like, that's stuff that people don't even get to see, right? And when you've been doing that, 5 previous nights where he's taking your freaking head off. I mean, yeah.
Or taking your nuts off. That'd be a whole story,
And they credit Rick Rude for the one who really changed Jim's attitude. I think that's a nice way to put it. And I'm not saying it wasn't in a way where Rick just beat the hell out of him. And literally there were altercations back in the locker room where I know one time that he took him out. But it was because they worked together for quite a while, and they credit Rick Rude to that he had the patience that Rick could have ruined his career, could have ruined Ultimate Warrior's career if he wanted to. He could have hurt him seriously where he was going to be put out of action, but that was another gift that one of the guys gave to Jim Hellwig, that Rick Rude had the patience and the willingness to do it, to say, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Every night I'll go out there because I'm going to win. The guys talk about, that group from Grandma B's, the guys that they talk about, tough guys.
Being bouncers.
And they say that when it came down to it, like Rick may not have been the one that would be left standing because he wasn't a huge guy, but he'll swing until his body stops letting him do it. And so, Rick was a legit tough guy and didn't like to mix it up. So the fact that he got to the point with Jim and said, look, dude, we can do this, every night, and I'll beat the living shit out of you until you get it. And then at some point, Jim started to say, okay,
Well,
I guess I better change, no matter how big or what the influence I might have with Vince McMahon, this guy's not going to let up, and it hurts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when they say that it really, he changed as a wrestler in the ring. And I don't think he ever could stop being that stiff, because that's just what's the nature. But he did start to learn how to work.
Mm.
And credit to Rick Rude for making that happen.
Yeah, well, credit to Honky Tonk Man for putting him over, because this SummerSlam moment of Warrior winning on a Continental title will be played still to this day, of highlighting just a quick SummerSlam moment, like, oh, let's go back and check out this amazing SummerSlam moment. Boom, boom, boom. Run down, shoulder block, clothesline, punch to the face, boom, pin ya. The crowd never goes down. The crowd never sits down. They don't have time to. It's music, win, boom, we celebrate. So it was great for that. But you got to interview Ultimate Warrior later on in the evening with the Intercontinental title. And this is your first big interview with Warrior, because there's classic moments of you guys. Well, I consider classic. You probably consider completely different feelings. But when you watch this one, you're brand new to the game. You're just there, hold the microphone. What was your first reactions to this character? Because you told me before you did study up on these wrestlers. You had cue cards with pictures and names and attributes. You knew who they were, but now you're next to him, interviewing him. What were your emotions like?
Well, I'd done some stuff with him prior to that. This wasn't just, all of a sudden I'm in this room with him. And, and Gene would say the same thing. It was one of those, you'd set him up and then just get out of the way. You might still be holding that microphone, but you're not interacting. You're not, your reaction to what the person's saying is not important. It's just, Jim was just, okay, I'm back here with Ultimate Warrior, and go ahead and say what you're going to say, because that's what I am. I'm definitely a mic stand during that. And that is, as we say, we're still trying to translate some of those promos
still,
but it came with that high octane delivery, and the intensity, and people who became Ultimate Warrior fans loved it. Loved it. And so that was pretty much, my whole mentality of that was just, get to him, make sure, let him do his thing, and then throw it back, or whatever it was, whatever the out was. And most of the time it was just Jim, just finishing, and they would go back to wherever they were. So that's kind of the way that one went. And like I said, I didn't want to hit a home run or a triple or whatever. I just wanted to single that night, just get through, make sure it gets done, and I do my part, and I don't make them do it again or anything like that. And that's what happened. So it was a good night.
You were not sacrificed to the skeletons that evening, folks.
Yeah,
you were safe. But Brutus Beefcake being removed from this matchup because of the Ron Bass storyline, I imagine if I'm Beefcake, you're still working house shows, as we talked about. He is on the C show as the main event against Hercules, but here he was going to win, or possibly win, the Intercontinental title. This is on pay-per-view. That means big money in his pocket. According to a shoot interview he did years ago, he said he lost over $100,000 by not working this event. And so if he did win or did lose here, he would have still continued on probably on house shows against Honky Tonk Man. Instead, he goes off and works with Ron Bass on TV, eventually shaving Ron Bass's head on an episode of Saturday Night's Main Event. So if you're Beefcake, what are you thinking? You're like, okay, well, that's great. This guy Warrior is now Intercontinental Champion, and I got to go work with Ron Bass. And again, nothing against Ron Bass, but he is no Honky Tonk Man.
Yeah. And, I love Brutus. But as we've talked about before, he was not going to be at the top of the card. He got the character. I think he took that character to great heights. And his association with the Hulkster certainly helped him. But the people that were booking that did not see that as being a really good moneymaker. They didn't know that was going to think that was going to put butts in seats. And it was always about, once we get these guys out on the road, are people going to come to see him? So as I said, with you're talking about those tours. Yeah. Well, Brutus could headline those, maybe even the B show, but the C shows, and he had great name recognition as far as Brutus the Barber, but thinking that was going to be a great run, and they obviously, maybe if there wasn't an Ultimate Warrior around, they might have gone with that, but this was the pairing for them. They wanted to push him. And he wasn't ready for really prime time, the Warrior, but he was on his way. And so that was where they were going to go, given that choice. You've heard superstars talk all the time. If I would have gotten that run, if I would have gotten to go with this guy, I would have made all this money, whatever. But that's just not the way they saw it then. And most of the times they were pretty much right on with guys that they put on in these runs. So
yeah,
would have loved to seen him make some good money and stuff like that. But that was, you think, were people outraged that that Brutus didn't get that shot and get to go and go up against I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either. One of the big things about this event, though, is the Brother Love segment, where there's going to be a big surprise. We don't know what it is. According to rumors, Vince McMahon is trying to get Ric Flair to jump over and join the WWF. He's going to make his debut here. That does not happen. We get the return of Hacksaw Jim Duggan after what recently happened with him and Iron Sheik. So you just with the company, you came in May of '88. So here we are in August of '88. Are you hearing the rumblings that Hulk Hogan, he's here, but we might get Ric Flair might be coming too now, and he's going to show up, because that's what this segment's really based around. But Vince, according to rumors, says, well, we don't have Flair, but we got Hacksaw, goddammit. So let's get Hacksaw out there.
Well, yeah. That there was always, that's the thing, there was always those rumors that that Ric Flair was going to come, even for years. And I think we all knew at some point it's going to happen, but were people amazed that it didn't happen? No, because that stuff happened all the time, where they would have these and a lot of times Rick would do that just to be able to help get management to get him more money, or want him to stick around longer, or get him another position or something like that. People did that, used that leverage all the time, and all it took was a phone call. If anybody heard he'd talk to Pat Patterson or something like that, which they would make sure they put out there. We work together, we're old friends, or whatever. So how close that was to happening, we'll never know. But there was always that rumor, and I know that, and it's too bad, because maybe if it would have happened earlier like that, maybe that Hulk Flair collision would have been, much more than it would become later, when they tried to make that happen and it didn't. But yeah, you heard those rumors all the time. When it didn't, I mean, obviously they were kind of making plans for it. But, Hacksaw stepping in, right. But he was welcomed back with open arms, and it turned out very well for Jim when he did make that return. So, and he's discussed that too. Would he have liked to have been able to literally back that car up and not have Sheik in the car? Sure.
Yeah.
But it changed the trajectory of his career, and he's still reaping the benefits from it from today.
100%.
Because of when he came back, and then it kind of became this character, fun-loving and all-American, and never looked back.
Oh my God. I will always love Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Yeah, because before that, prior to that, he was down Mid-South and all that. He was a badass tough guy. I mean, literally, he was always a tough guy, but he wasn't the funny, comical. He was just a badass brawler. So that was good. That worked out really well for him. But it's too bad the pain he had to suffer in the meantime. But it really did work.
No, well, he got brought back and so did the Iron Cheek. So nothing,
Yeah. And I was that the highlight of the show. No, it was a sidebar.
No. Even if Ric Flair did come out, I don't think it would have been the highlight of the
Yeah.
show. If Ric Flair showed up in the WWF, it'd just be like, whoa, this is cool. Because if you're a wrestling fan, you don't get every channel in the entire world.
Yeah.
Just because wrestling's in the South doesn't mean I get it in the North. That's a whole different ballgame of cable and television at this time. So it's not like everyone gets everything. So
Yeah,
it's a little different story. But also on this event, Powers of Pain make their pay-per-view debut against the Bolsheviks. Powers of Pain have the Baron von Raschke, who is a star before this, but he looks like the Executioner. He's got a hood on, he's got weird paint on his face. But originally, Vince McMahon is trying to bring in the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors. They don't want to leave what they're doing because they're making a lot of money off of Japan and other different organizations that exist. So instead, we get the Powers of Pain. The Powers of Pain were in a storyline with the Road Warriors a few months even before coming into the WWF. So it's very interesting because Ric Flair doesn't come in now. He comes in later. It's okay. Legion of Doom doesn't come in now. They come in later. It's okay. Was Vince just trying to grab all the talent from all the territories right now, and each one of them was like, well, I'm very valuable, so if you want me, it's going to cost you. Instead, you got Powers of Pain, which are probably a discount price.
Yeah, but would he have liked to had Animal and Hawk? Sure. It wasn't. I mean, he did like to pilfer some of the talent from other territories, of course. That anytime you could weaken them a little bit. But there were guys that he really just personally wanted to get in, and Ric Flair was one of them. And then the Road Warriors, definitely. They were the hottest tag team in the world, in every territory, and in Japan. So to have gotten them over, yeah, absolutely. And people talk about the Powers of Pain were his answer to it, yeah. But as we've discussed before, to me, Demolition was the answer for the WWE. And they were similarities, but at the same time, they were unique in their own ways. And when we have these discussions about, was there not enough room for both of these tag teams? And I always thought, like, you could have these two tag teams going against each other for years. I mean, you could have a storyline between those two. And to think that, well, I got to get rid of one because now I got these guys. I was like, that makes no sense to me, because they were, big, tough tag teams, but still very different from each other and tremendously over. I mean, come on, Axe and Smash were just, they were right there at the top, and we know how popular tag teams were then. Yeah. So there was plenty of room, that whole discussion never made sense to me, that you couldn't have both. Like, please bring them in. I love them. They're just going to add to this whole giant division we've got of tag teams.
I loved Powers of Pain, especially now too, because their baby faces are huge, they're strong. But when they come out, honest to God, dude, I swear, it was like watching a video game, not the one that you were in, WWF European Rampage.
Oh, okay. Just put the knife in a little deeper.
Someone commented, they were like, why would you do that to Mooney? I was like, I didn't mean to do that to Mooney. I love Mooney. But
seriously, folks, it was
It's good.
Didn't lose any sleep over that one.
Yeah, it's good. It's good here.
I told you, I had it all over on Linda McMahon when I made that Coliseum deal, right? Right?
Yeah, you're right. You won up on that one. You got him. But with Powers of Pain, though, it was not more obvious to me watching this event last night that Powers of Pain was Vince McMahon's being like, all right, go out there and do all the Road Warrior taunts. Like, it was, honest to God, like watching a video game where they would just took all the taunts from Legion of Doom, shoved them inside Warlord and Barbarian, and was like, all right, just go be them, but we'll call you something different. And people might be offended by that, but honestly, after watching this last night, it was so obvious that Demolition is not the Legion of Doom ripoff that for 30 years people thought. It's Powers of Pain. The evidence is there, Your Honor.
Yes, absolutely. But, and love those guys, but they were not Hawk and Animal.
No.
Their promos or lack of were not by any comparison to what, Mike and Joe could do. And, and I've talked before too about Hawk, that he had, I loved his voice. Well, that whole, you could have been a great voiceover guy, I always thought. There's a few guys in there. Bill Eadie is another one who I always thought had great pipes. And as being an announcer, I could appreciate that. But as we know, back then, promos were everything too. It wasn't just what you did in the ring. You had to be able to get in front of a camera and sell it. And those two, and Mike was one of the best. And the creativity, not just the delivery, but the creativity and stuff they would come up with.
Yeah.
So, sure. Yeah. There's no question. You're right that Powers of Pain was Vince's answer to the Road Warriors. But as far as how they did it in the ring, the way they could move in the ring, and the promos they did, there was no comparison. They were very, very different. So in a sense of, as far as selling and doing interviews, because Axe and Smash were really good at it too. That was why, to me, to putting those two against each other or, on their own, it didn't matter. They sold tickets. No question.
Agreed. Also on this pay-per-view is an amazing moment that's controversial to a lot of people out there. It's Rick Rude defeating Junkyard Dog. This is the end of Junkyard Dog in the WWF pay-per-view. Don Morocco has the same distinction here, and so does Campetera, who holds on a little bit November. But in this matchup with Rick Rude, he's wearing Junkyard Dog tights. There's his face, it's airbrushed, it's beautiful. But when Rick Rude goes to the top rope in the middle of this matchup, it looks like he's about to just like rip his clothes off, like expose himself. And he pulls off his tights on the top rope a little bit just to show his crotch. It's Cheryl Roberts. It's Jake the Snake's wife's face on his crotch. Just apparently it's Pat Patterson's idea. When Jake sees this backstage, he runs out. He attacks Rick Rude. Junkyard Dog loses by disqualification because of Jake. I have interviewed Jake, and he was not happy at all having his wife involved, having the wife involved with the boys, or having his wife's face on Rick Rude's crotch. What did you see backstage this evening with Jake's reactions to this? Because it didn't look like he was happy.
Well, I know, but Jake say all that, but nobody liked a good storyline better than Jake Roberts.
Okay.
And he knew. Now, as far as separating his personal life from the business, I totally understand that. It wasn't I probably initially him seeing what Randy dealt with in his life, probably didn't want to have that part of his business either. But I think that he saw, and then she had to agree to become part of it. It wasn't like they just did this and said, for the first time when Jake's backstage and he sees that happen. And that's
what the hell?
Yeah, and runs out there. So I'm sure they made it worth his while. And it was a great storyline. I mean, come on. It was really clever. And Rick with those the airbrushed tights that he had, man, he could do a lot with those. We talked before, when they went on the Kathy Lee and Regis yes. And Kathy Lee, and he went on there with her face on his crotch, and she walked off the set. But this was, this is a great storyline, and I think that, like I said, when it came down to it, Jake's a businessman, and he also understood the business really well, and was really good about whatever it was, making it work. And so at some point he had to agree to it. And but I don't doubt for a minute he probably wasn't real happy, and probably there was some trepidation in his mind of what's this going to do, as far as my personal life is, exposing more of that. I don't like people knowing about that part of me. But like anything else, Jake Roberts was brilliant at making storylines work. And you mentioned JYD, and it's just amazing to me. And I guess people who know about his career or followed, Mid-South and those other territories, that he never really, he was popular, but never really got over to anywhere near the heights that he reached in these other places.
Why do you think that is, though?
And it's
the combo of things.
I think that it was kind of a regional thing.
Okay.
In a sense, like down south, man, he was gigantic. Hacksaw talks about, Hacksaw was there too with him, and he talks about the crowds that would come in there. I mean, the JYD owned the place. He knew how to work those crowds, and just was tremendously over, blew the roof off every time. And he talks about the fights that would be in the crowd before they went out there, that there was like a rabid, house. And I think coming up and, people not really understanding that it was kind of that old school that Junkyard Dog was a part of. And it was, his character was kind of thin, just Junkyard Dog. He was a rough and tumble guy. And they had the, barking, and it just,
headbutt you.
People never really got it.
Yeah.
So that always was kind of amazing to me, and I didn't understand it at the time how big he was down south. A lot of these guys would come up, and I didn't know their rich history or the dues they had paid. Yeah, so I would always look at it from how they kind of reaction they get from the crowd. How do they earn the coming in? Because a lot of them people didn't know sometimes, that because people didn't, they were the WWF fans, as we talk about. And so they'd have to really almost start from scratch. And then if they didn't get that push, or that they had some gimmick that was, kind of just thin, they might be one of the greatest workers in the ring. But we all knew what it was all about, showmanship back then, and cutting promos, and for whatever reason it just never happened. And maybe it was later in his career, and he was beat up and had some issues outside of the ring.
Well, he doesn't look that much in shape here either, though. I think if you look at even 2 years ago, he's musclier. Here he doesn't look very, I'm not the greatest man in shape either. I'm not gonna but he doesn't look like the way he did a few years ago. And he just looks like a big guy, versus before he looked muscular.
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's it. I don't know. You know, maybe we did a whole dark side of the ring about him, I believe. So, it's not the junkyard we saw in Mid South or the one we
Yeah.
saw a couple of years ago. He was in that rock and wrestling cartoon with Hulk Hogan, so he was big enough to
Yeah.
get a character.
No,
in
and
that.
I think they thought that he was going to, that it was going to be, he was going to be able to stay up in that, but it just didn't work out like that.
Yeah.
Or,
And we met Jake. We mentioned Jake and Rick Rude. Well, Jake beat Hercules later in the night. Just a simple match, you know, nothing very special. It's just this SummerSlam. I see a lot of comparisons online saying, well, like this is like a house show versus a like a WrestleMania, like a big event where each match is here because of storylines, you know. And I can see that comparison, but also I thought this was a fun event in general. But since we're talking about the Junkyard Dog and his kind of run ending, Bad News Brown defeated Ken Patera. Dino Bravo defeated Don Morocco. When you think of those names, Ken Patera, Don Morocco, and Junkyard Dog, it's like they're not part of, in my eyes, this golden era of the WWF. They're part of the rock and wrestling era of the WWF. And some people put those together, but I don't. What WrestleMania 1 to 3 are part of rock and wrestling. After 3, to me, it becomes golden era. And it's interesting to see these 3 wrestlers are gone, but yet they help build a foundation. But yet with wrestling, you notice as well, with wrestling, once you're out of the machine and you're not part of that machine anymore, the machine doesn't need you. It just spits you out when we're done with you. It's sad to see that happen to wrestlers like this. Ken Patera, going to jail for 2 years. Vince, though, paying his wife and his kid money for those 2 years, but he was in jail, giving him a second chance when he came back. Like, there's a lot of good things that happened with these wrestlers, but this is the end for all 3 of them. And did you have any relationships with these guys? I know you just came in, but they're out.
no, not really. And it was kind of like that. They were on their way out when I was basically getting established there. But I did work with them a few times, Don Morocco, and I remember, Ken Patera. But you're right when you mentioned that rock and wrestling, which was very necessary and very beneficial to the WWE then. But it was definitely an end to it. And then, like you said, we started the golden era where, MTV wasn't going to really help anymore.
Yeah.
But it was a great way to kick things off and get people's attention, because I remember living in New York City at the time, working for Major League Baseball productions, and even I becoming very aware of what was happening with the WWE, WWF, and, the Cyndi Lauper and the MTV connection. And it was like a big deal. Everybody was hearing about it. So a very necessary part for a brilliant marketing strategy and connecting to that and drawing in a lot of young people and just exposing them to it. But and I think even Vince knew that it wasn't going to last. And so, you knew that was going to at some point come to an end. And Vince had plans beyond it and was already putting that in works. But there were some that just weren't going to be able to go along for the ride. And the guys you mentioned were part of that, like, as you said, kind of that rock and wrestling. And
yeah, it's sad to see that happen to wrestlers, but again, it happens with sports.
Yeah, but there was, but it was also, there was other things going on with.
Well, yeah, it's not like
some of them
like
making exits like that. Yeah, they might have survived if other things weren't going on.
Of course. The first matchup of the evening is the British Bulldogs versus the Fabulous Rougeaus. This match happened before the infamous fight between Jacques and Dynamite Kid backstage, but there clearly is tension because the rumor is neither team wants to lose to each other, so we have a time limit draw. And if you watch this, this probably is the best matchup of the night. It was incredible. It was great to see him wrestle, but the Fabulous Rougeaus and their little baby American flags is just one of the greatest things ever, because we're all American boys.
Oh,
we love America.
Boys.
Do you?
Yeah.
Why is your American flag so damn small? But is that an indication that wrestlers don't respect each other by saying, like, I'm not going to lose to you? Well, I'm not going to lose to you either. Like, how is it really up to wrestlers to choose who loses and who wins?
Well, it isn't. I mean, when it comes right down to it. So it's a balance, I think. You're trying to keep everybody happy.
Okay.
And then it's one of those things, maybe you want to keep the storyline going and people are going to want to go see these people at a house show. So sure, there can be this tension between tag teams, or they don't like the storyline of where they're going, or they think that it's going to hurt their image or something, and they're like, "Come on, look at it. How about this? You know, what if we have this? You know, where there's really no conclusion, and then we can start the storyline between them." So it bottom line, like if they want, like, no, you're doing the job. You're going down at this. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to either have to walk or, you know, so it's a balance, because what is their value to the company? And then how we can't be seen giving into these guys every time, because then everybody else is going to want to do that.
Right.
They don't like the storyline. So you got to be, you know, very careful where you tread. But as we would see, that this would become a very real issue between these two tag teams. They did not like each other.
No.
And as we know.
No, we had a whole British Bulldogs podcast. It's up on the Primetime with Sean Mooney YouTube channel right now, and people are really enjoying it. You know, we're bringing back a lot of memories from the past, and they're loving to hear you share your amazing insights on, you know, British Bulldogs, the Rockers. So check that out as well. Of course, Instagram is live and well, Facebook, TikTok, everything, all the socials are back and alive, and people are loving Sean Mooney interacting online. So thank you for that. And later on, we will read some questions that were sent in on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube on the Primetime with Sean Mooney channels, because people will have some questions for you about this event. So we will toss them out later on in the evening. So we appreciate that for interacting with us. But Frenchie Martin, I love him so much because he has a sign here that says USA not okay. It's a giant sign. His is giant. Rougeau's so small, so small. We have Bolsheviks loving Russia. We have Fabulous Rougeaus pretending they love America. We got USA not okay. Man, hating America is just a tried and true gimmick. We have Demolition, the tag team champions, their heels, taking on Hart Foundation, who are baby faces. They recently fired Jimmy Hart after they found out in the contract that Jimmy was taking a large portion of their winnings. How dare you, Jimmy? Dirty Jimmy. So Brett and Anvil turned babyface by firing him. But in this matchup, Jimmy runs down with a megaphone, hands it to Axe. Axe hits Brett in the back of the head. Demolition pick up the win here. It's funny, in 2 years from now, they'll have a SummerSlam 1990 rematch, and it's probably the best matchup of that evening. So it's just strange. Do you think it's like when you have the Hart Foundation going from heels to baby faces, it's so easy at this time. All you have to do is go, hey, my evil manager, well, I don't like him anymore. And all the fans go, oh, all right, well, then we like you too.
Yeah. You know, and I always thought, my feeling was always that the Hart Foundation were baby faces. I don't know, you know, even with Jim Neidhart being, you know, the kind of the, you know, crazy with them. But I always thought that they'd make better baby faces. I think it was always very difficult for people to, you know, accept Brett being a heel. You know, Brett, everything about him, he's kind of like that, you know, that big brother, friend, protector kind of guy. Even though, you know, he's not fun and, you know, fun loving and jovial, or, you know, joking or something like that. But he's always a very serious guy that you'd love to have in your corner. So, you know, could he play a bad guy? Sure, but he was just this guy that you felt like he thinks that he knows the difference between right and wrong, and that's the side he's always going to be on. So you know, you don't have to like it or not, but that's just me. Yeah. So to me, that always translated to a popular babyface. So
Yep.
I wasn't, the turn, because Jimmy's embezzling from him. Okay.
Damn
You
you,
know.
Jimmy.
Well, and it was kind of like people just needed an excuse, like, oh, okay, that's why they're going to be good guys now.
They would have been fine if Jimmy wasn't stealing money from them.
Yeah,
They're upset about that part, so they're like, "No,
yeah.
we're out. We're done with you."
Right, and the thing is with in Demolition, and Barry Darsow talks about this too, that they would do stuff that was underhanded, but it's almost like they didn't have to. They just they got away with it, and they were really good at it. Like you never caught them doing it, is what he would say. So no matter what, it always seemed legit. You couldn't blame the ref because they were so could be so dastardly and so conniving to do it. So that the old megaphone. How many times was that used?
Oh,
but it worked, right?
So many megaphones,
Yes.
Also, the Big Boss Man defeated Coco Beware. I think Coco Beware might have the worst pay-per-view record in the WWF's history. I don't think he ever won a match on pay-per-view, but still, Big Boss Man just came in and he dominates. And, that's pretty much what happened at SummerSlam, except a fun note that the theme song for this event actually turns out to be later purposed as the Royal Rumble theme song from 1991 through 1994. So the song just changes a little bit, which is a fun fact. Again, on a Friday night, if you have trivia about SummerSlam, that's your trivia fact. But we have questions, Mr. Mooney, from the fans on Instagram, on Twitter, and Facebook about this event for you. Are you ready, sir?
Yeah. You should mention them before you start firing away on those. Give credit to Jim Johnston, who we could do a whole show on. We should. I've interviewed him several times and did a actual forum that we did at StarCast a few years ago. Fascinating guy and just incredibly talented. He's
do you have a copy?
Yeah, it was up. I know that Conrad has it, and
oh wow, I know.
And it was a
conversation with you and Jim on the prime time.
And you can also on prime time with Sean Mooney, but like a fascinating guy. I mean, just a talented musician and composer. And imagine that he could go between all these different genres, with the different kinds of music, depending on who the character. Imagine how tough that would be, because most people that are composers, whatever, they have a certain mindset or style of music that they're very good at. And Jim could do, he could, whatever it was, heavy metal, grandiose, fun and uplifting, whatever it was, whatever was called for, and he could sit there and make that stuff come up. And so he certainly deserves an awful lot of credit for changing how wrestlers were welcomed to the ring just by a few notes, as we know, that were in professional history. So Jim Johnston, really, and a great guy, but deserves a lot of credit for what he did for making the WWE sound like what it did back then, and helping it become what it did at the time.
Yeah, people still in today's world complain about entrance music in the WWE because when someone comes out, they're like, "Who?" And then they see them. Oh, it's that person. There's only a few recognizable entrance musics now in today's world. When in the Jim Johnston era, one note, boom. Oh, I know who that is.
Yep.
Oh, I know that is. They used to sell CDs and cassettes and albums based off of these people's entrance music. So we recognized who they were immediately. In today's world, even I, as a wrestling fan, I'm like, I watch everything and I'm like, who's that? Oh, okay. And then I know who it is because I see them. Not I hear the music and go, oh, I know who that is. So, and
who else deserves credit for some of that music too was the Mouth of the South.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Jimmy Hart, and we talked about today the All American Boys. That was Jimmy, and we don't like rock and roll. We'd rather listen to Barry Manilow. Just look at the lyrics of that sometime, but that's another story. But Jimmy Jimmy really was a very talented songwriter too. So anyway, that's another. We should do a whole episode just on music.
I know. We'll get Sue pretty quick playing it. But let's get to those questions so the fans can find out.
Fire away.
From Twitter, this is from Andrew Pano. With Macho Man Randy Savage in the top spot, how good was his friendship working with Hulk Hogan around this time?
Yeah, well, I think that there was a lot of respect. I think that's pretty much, you could say that was a big part of it. They were, at one time, I think, very good friends. And, the circumstances of the business and Elizabeth, not that it was because Randy thought that there was some affair or something going on, but Randy felt let down later on when they started to break apart, and she was good friends with Linda, Hulk Hogan's wife at the time, and I think Randy felt that they were closer or better friends, that Hulk should have brought more information to him.
Oh, Jesus.
Go through. I'm trying to
eavesdrop. No, let me tell you about husband and wives. You're on team wife. Don't bring
yeah, but it's also bros, and
bros
especially
before,
in this business. Yeah. So that relationship was, at one point really good, and then it really was fractured, and I don't think they'd ever recovered. I think that they did, reach some kind of, friendship again, but it was never the same. That whole storyline, as we said, how long it went on and everything, but there was a lot of reality to it as well. There was things that, changed emotionally for both of them through it. That's kind of the way it was. I don't think that they were ever best friends to any stretch of the imagination, but they were close. And I think they both realized what they both brought to the business, and doing business together was made them a lot of money.
Okay.
So, but as far as, being buds and everything like that, I don't think it ever really came to that. But I do believe that there was always a lot of respect for what they both accomplished.
They weren't mega powers in friendship. I'm sad. Yeah. From TJL6666. What are your thoughts on Superstar Billy Graham being here on commentary? He felt out of place for me. Interesting. I also felt that way too. What about you?
Yeah, well, as we talked about at the top of this discussion, that it was a time when they were still forming that broadcast team, which I think became one of the best ever. When you had Jesse and Vince, and then Bobby and Bobby Heenan and Gorilla, and then Gene and I had the great fortune to have been a part of that too, but. As a collective there, just all that, I really do think it became one of the best announced teams ever in professional wrestling. But this was before all this was happening, and Vince is still trying to find those pieces. And Superstar Billy Graham, Vince was very loyal to him, that, a Superstar had worked for him and been loyal through those early years there, when the transition was going on. And so Vince felt that loyalty to him and took care of Superstar. Okay. And, as I said, they were trying to find who was going to fit with who. Billy Graham had done he'd done commentary before, but as I said, it was kind of this old school approach. It wasn't where that Vince wanted to go with it. Vince wanted more of that kind of network sports team, and he liked the that banter between the two and how they would mix together. And Superstar just wasn't it. and being dropped in there, and him and Gorilla had not worked together a lot, so that's always tough too. But I think it was pretty clear that that wasn't going to be a regular thing.
Cool. From Rick Alcia, since the WWF was running monthly house shows at MSG during this time, was SummerSlam 88 looked at as just another show, or was there an awareness that this was going to be a big event?
Oh, there was absolute awareness that it was going to be a big event. If you lived in the area and you were used to seeing, every month us coming down there, and we did great crowds there. I mean, I remember there was always a pretty good house, but you have to remember we spent how many months building this up, so even people in the area knew it was a big deal. People that would go to the shows every month knew it was a big deal. The cards that would go there monthly were part of the tour. So you would get, a few of the big names there, but it wasn't a packed card like you did we'd see at SummerSlam. So absolutely, people knew this was a big deal no matter where you were. But as far as across the country, and, everything was New York City and
the Big
wherever
Apple.
you live in the country, it was the Big Apple. It was the Mecca.
Yeah.
So
true.
No question. Everybody, no matter where you were, if you were in New York City, with not just another house show. For the boys, in a way, it kind of was, because as we talked about, they're coming off a loop of they're dragging, But when they show up there that day, it's got to be like, I haven't worked for 6 months and I can't wait to get into that ring.
Right.
I'm in tip-top ring shape, but I'm well rested and ready to go. Let's have a good one.
Yeah, there was none of the
they were exhausted.
From Bruce Hewison, I'm so sorry if I botched your name. Hey Sean, SummerSlam 88 is my all-time favorite event over here in New Zealand. Wow, New Zealand. It was the first big annual show we really heard about. We didn't get it on live TV, on pay-per-view. It wasn't available, but they love this and they got it from their local video store. What's something you remember from backstage at SummerSlam 88 that never made TV or would instantly surprise fans? Now, that is a good question. Is there something going on backstage at this event that you remember that you're like, man, I can't believe that wasn't on TV, or I can't believe this is happening?
Well, first I want to address that's really cool that that he brings up that all the way on the other side of the world, down under, as they say, that it's getting the world's attention, and saying that like we're talking 88 now, and it really is becoming. We always used to say what the world is watching. Well, they were watching the WWF, and so that's very clear. As far as something happening backstage, the only thing I really do remember is that when we do these interviews, it was. Because I did, like you said, the post interviews, like
you
after
interviewed
matches.
Jesse about him stealing money, and Warrior backstage about winning the
Yeah, but Warrior in particular, because as I said, we had to do those live because you didn't know, like you wore the face paint and everything like that. So that was what stood out to me is I remember, like, after that match, how long it took for him to come back and do to get to me. And I don't remember, I was like thinking, like, where is he? Because, you think like it after the match, and I don't remember how, but for me, that's what stood out to me, that the span of time, and maybe it was just because I was in a time warp, I don't know. But I kept thinking, like, it's not that far from where I am.
He just ran to the ring. He got run back here.
Yeah. And that there was no discussion of what he was going to, most of the other guys I would have a clue.
Okay.
But Jim was in his own world as far as that. And probably even if he wouldn't have have told me, I wouldn't have been able to prepare for it. It was just gotta, here we go.
We're going to talk about skeletons and sacrificing.
Yeah,
I really loud. You're okay with that, right? Like, oh, yeah, sure.
So that's what stood out to me. That, and I was used to where I would have some idea where they're going, but with him, it was never. It was just, and that was my first real exposure to what that was going to be like, because that never changed. It never changed. There was no reason to have a discussion with him about, okay, where are we going with this? It was just said, okay, go, and then when you're done,
I can't imagine. Like, oh, so what are we gonna do today? Be like, you just hold on. Like, all right, that's fine. I forgot to mention earlier too was Ultimate Warrior on the pre-tapes, because they had Superstars and Wrestling Challenges taped 2 weeks before SummerSlam that would air after SummerSlam. So Warrior actually has the Intercontinental title on these loops of Superstars and Wrestling Challenges on those. So if you're a kid going to the event, you're like, wait a minute, why does he have the IC title? It's because he wins it 2 weeks later on TV, and then it will air later on because they're obviously pre-taped. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I totally forgot about that.
And I think what they would do with those, they'd have to find a way to give it back to
the guy at the end.
And some disqualification or something like that. So
you didn't actually win earlier, folks. Come back next time and buy the tickets. That's so funny. From Instagram though, this guy just wants to tell you he loves the poster. Reedster 2025. That poster from SummerSlam 88 is everything I love about wrestling in that era and everything that is missing from it now. Yeah, the poster with you got Liz on her hands on Savage and Hogan holding them back, and there's Virgil and Andre, and it's pretty nice. From Greenberg though, how loud and insane was the pop for Warriors music when it hit? Because you were there. Can you hear the sounds deep inside the arena?
Oh yeah, and that that didn't matter where you were. When you started hearing that dun 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 dun, and that it was immediate. It was like what you mentioned, when a few notes. That was certainly one of them. We always know with Undertaker with the dong, but Warrior, it was that beat, that dun 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 dun, and people would just erupt. And Madison Square Garden and I think it holds 20,000.
Yep.
But
a little more probably.
And that place is packed. It feels like 100,000. That noise in there. And the only pop that was maybe bigger was when Honky Tonk went down, and that was I remember that distinctly. That place just blew up. Because they weren't expecting that. They thought they were going to get something out, like the Honky Tonk. I mean, he's the Intercontinental Champion. He'd been an Intercontinental Champion for a long time. He always found a way. And the Warrior was just, this tidal wave that just went in there and just destroyed him in seconds. And so, there was 2 giant pops that day in there that involved the Warrior.
Well, again, thank you guys so much for your questions from Instagram and Facebook. We really appreciate it.
Keep them coming.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, because from now on, if you don't know, spoiler, we have a lot of episodes in the can, and so those will be coming out sporadically, but also new content is coming out connected to those. We also have, of course, backstories with Chris Chambers. So there's a lot happening here on Primetime with Sean Mooney. We'll have exclusive audio shows, exclusive video shows, lots of fun things on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. So we really appreciate you being involved here on Primetime with Sean Mooney, especially SummerSlam 88, your first SummerSlam, your first pay-per-view. So before we wrap this up, any more thoughts about SummerSlam?
Well, it was great to talk about, because it was kind of a pivotal point with the company that here we're, established the big 4. And I don't think there was ever a question that once Vince started putting that stuff into motion, that this was going to be a part of it, and for many years to come. There, I was kind of surprised. I thought, okay, when are they going to add another one? That's what I thought. It'd maybe be every 2 months, but no. But this was a pivotal time, as we talked about during this whole discussion of where things were changing, and every one of these pay-per-view events, every one of these big events that we were doing, we were learning and finding ways to improve. And as we saw, the green screens got better, the backgrounds got better, the way they shot the matches, what we did backstage was changing, bigger and better, involving the audience. So it was all part of the evolution of what the WWE was becoming, and this was a great example of that evolution as things were changing.
Yep. And next time we'll review this in 5 years, and we'll wear our itsy bitsy teeny weeny yellow polka dot bikinis. But anyways, I'm not going to. Maybe he will. I'm Steve Wall. He's Sean Mooney. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.
It's the golden age